Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this webinar on clean air best practices in the workplace. My name is Julia. I work as a B2B sales and outreach manager for SmartAir UK. And today I'll be talking about why we should be thinking about improving indoor air quality for both long-term and short-term well-being at work. There will be a brief Q&A session at the end of this webinar, but if you have any questions after today, please feel free to send me an email. It will be listed at the end of this. This webinar is currently being recorded so that we can share with anyone else who's interested in learning more about this topic. So, our agenda for today. I'll introduce you to SmartAir and our global impact for those who don't know us already. Then we will move on to understanding indoor air quality a bit better, especially in work environments. I'll talk about how poor air quality affects our health in the short and long term, and what steps we can take to improve air quality indoors while at work. Finally, I'll explain some of the reasons why we should care about clean air, and then talk about what steps employees and employers can both take to improve the quality of the air they work in every day. So, SmartAir is a social enterprise and the only B corporation fighting to reduce health effect from indoor air pollution. We aim to make clean air accessible by offering workshops, webinars such as this one, rental solutions, and also our corporate donation program to provide clean air to those who cannot afford it. What about our global impact? Since 2013 to date, we have sold as SmartAir more than 149,000 HEPA air cleaners and shipped them to more than 50 countries globally. We've held about 800 workshops in 20 countries in more than 100 organizations and wrote many articles on air pollution and air quality that have been published on our Clean Air blog. This blog has been read by more than 10 million people across 196 countries, and hopefully has informed them on air quality thanks to these articles. So, an introduction to indoor air quality. We breathe in air to stay alive, but the quality of the air that we breathe has an impact on our health in the short and long term. We hear a lot about the efforts to improve outdoor air quality by decreasing pollution, but indoor air quality is just as important for our well-being, given how much time we spend indoors. Poor indoor air quality can worsen asthma symptoms, temporarily affect cognitive abilities, increase blood pressure, and also facilitate viral transmission, just to cite a few adverse effects. So what metrics should we be looking at to ensure that indoor air quality meets or exceeds the needed standards? There's quite a few pollutants to monitor, including VOCs, volatile organic compounds, but our focus today will be on CO2, PM2.5, and PM10. Most of us spend 1/3 of our day working, so the quality of the air that we breathe while doing so is very important. And additionally, employers actually have a responsibility to their employees to provide them with a safe and healthy workplace, including good indoor air quality. In Ireland, for instance, the Health and Safety Authority updated guidelines to instruct employers to carry out indoor air quality assessments. In some cases, HVAC systems alone are not updated or powerful enough to filter out pollutants, given how many people are in a indoor space at any given time. So that's also why assessments of this kind are important. if you don't know whether they're working, ultimately you can't take steps to improve the ventilation and filtration setup in the workplace. So what are some of the common sources of indoor air pollution in workplaces? One would be office equipment. Another one, cleaning products, as particles can stay suspended in the air for hours after cleaning. Building materials, even if works are being carried out from outside. And then also a very obvious one, rebreathed and shared air with closed doors and windows specifically, but also outdoor pollution. So carbon dioxide, also known as CO2, is commonly found in the air, and it builds up easily indoors due to the air that we exhale. Air purifiers don't remove it in this case, unless you're in space or in a submarine. A large concentration of CO2 measured in parts per million affect our well-being in many ways. They can impair cognitive function, disrupt our sleep, make us sleepy during the day, but also facilitate virus transmission by proxy. When outdoors, CO2 levels don't usually exceed 400 parts per million, while indoors, it's recommended to keep levels below 800 parts per million, especially when there's more than one person in the room. Ultimately, the higher the CO2 levels, the higher is the percentage of air rebreathed, which should motivate us to keep these levels as low as possible. So what about particulate matter? Particulate matter, also known as PM, um, it, they're a mixture of solid particles and liquid droplets found in the air. PM is emitted during the combustion of solid and liquid fuels, such as for power generation, cooking, and also heating. PM2 in particular is considered dangerous to our health because due to its size, these particles can enter our actual bloodstream after being inhaled. The WHO has set a standard for maximum exposure of 15 micrograms per cubic meter as a daily average and of 5 as an annual average. For reference, burning toast in a little office kitchen can make PM 2.5 levels easily reach 150 micrograms per cubic meter. So it is good practice to try and keep PM levels as low as possible to reduce adverse effects on our health. And in this case, air purifiers can help. So what are the health impact? What's the health impact of poor indoor air quality on us? Eh, when we're talking about short-term effects, we can see we could experience headaches, fatigue or drowsiness, an increase of blood pressure, but also some respiratory symptoms such as coughing, a dry or sore throat, and also sneezing. In terms of long-term consequences, those are a little bit more uh, dire in the sense that we could develop chronic respiratory conditions such as asthma, but also cardiovascular conditions, which also include cancer. Then at work, there's also consequences with poor indoor air quality. Some of them might be a temporary reduction in cognitive abilities. For instance, this could translate to a decrease in productivity and output at work. But also, in this case, viruses can be transmitted more easily, and this turns into employees needing more time off work sick. So how do we improve indoor air quality in the workplace? There's a few different ways to improve indoor air quality. One is ventilation, natural ventilation, where airflow happens through openings. In this case, it would be considered best practice to open windows at regular intervals to disperse CO2 buildup. If you work in a building where windows don't open, consider at minimum to keep doors open during meetings. There's also mechanical ventilation, for instance, HVAC systems. Another way to improve indoor air quality is through filtration. This option is useful in the UK, where many modern commercial buildings don't have windows that can open. In this case, HEPA air purifiers can help bring down PM levels and filter the air that we breathe while indoors. Air purifiers don't have to be a huge investment for the workplace, but it's important to look at a few specific features to make sure that the money is well spent. Particularly, you want to look at their clean air delivery rate, noise levels to make sure that no one will turn them off because they're too loud, but also power usage, so you know what to expect in terms of running costs. Monitoring the air is also a great tool for indoor air quality. By monitoring it, we are able to make informed decisions to improve it. So, for instance, if the CO2 is spiking, we'll know to open a window or a door. Whereas if we see high levels of PM 2.5 or PM 10, we'll know to turn on an air purifier. There's research and real-life examples suggesting that a mix of ventilation and filtration is the best combination for an overall better indoor air quality. That is because ventilation alone dilutes the air and lowers CO2, but it doesn't remove particles from the air by itself. Whereas air purifiers can help with that thanks to localized filtration. Using a combination of both, the global firm Stantec noticed a 45% in particle reduction. So why should we prioritize indoor air quality? Very simply put, just as we would not drink dirty or contaminated water, we should not be breathing in harmful air. We might not see how polluted the air we breathe is, but our lungs and body do notice, making us feel the effects in the short and long term. Advocating for better indoor air quality everywhere should be considered a priority, and also raising awareness means that we help make clean air more accessible. Sometimes improving indoor air quality simply means opening up a window or a door while cooking or during a work meeting. Sometimes it will mean needing to equip a room with an air purifier to reduce the PM count. Clean air is also a human right, according to the United Nations. In 2022, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution declaring that access to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a universal human right. Unless we start monitoring the quality of the air that we breathe on a large scale, we will not really be able to make fully informed decisions for ourselves, our colleagues, and our loved ones' well-being. As you can see, there's some UK employers that are already have already chosen to prioritize indoor air quality, and they've taken steps towards that goal. Some of these establishments are the Ministry of Defence, the UK government, Westminster, and also Wembley Stadium. This shows that it can be done even if it might not be advertised as often or as publicly. So to conclude, a few summarizing points and some final remarks. Monitoring indoor air quality is just as important as monitoring outdoor air pollution. CO2 and PM levels are the pollutants we should be most aware of during the day. Improving air quality at work can be simple. If monitors or air purifiers are not available, a great first step is to frequently open doors and windows. We can't see poor indoor air quality, but it impacts our well-being and performance at work, as we've seen. Also, for anyone who is interested, we do offer free clean air audits in both Edinburgh and London, where we would carry out an air quality assessment of your workplace and recommend next steps in terms of ventilation and filtration needs. Feel free to get in touch if this is of interest. Finally, employees and employers can easily assess their workplace air quality with just a few air quality monitors, because at the end of the day, we all have to start somewhere. So if you have any questions, this would be the moment to ask, to either put them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll do my best to reply. I see one hand up.
Oh, hi, Julia. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I just had a question. When there isn't local or government legislation pushing the need for employers to take indoor air quality seriously, not just in the workplace, but also at an education level, what tools or evidence would you suggest beyond things like this, which requires people to flag this to showcase the importance of it? How do you deal with the fact that a lot of newer buildings do have ventilation systems because of the, like you said, the windows that don't open, but that's not the same thing as having clean air? So how would you suggest advocating for that when pushback can sometimes be along the lines of, in light of COVID, well, the government hasn't legislated this, so we don't need to do anything?
Yeah. Thanks for your question. So, personally, I come from a research sort of background. So, my first go-to is always to lead with evidence. And so, that can mean many things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of scientific evidence, even though there's loads. It could just be for a particular employer that you bring in a an air quality monitor that also monitors for PM particles, so that you have visual proof that the air is not great. Alternatively, sometimes there's also um, it's not much a resistance of getting the product per se as an air purifier, but it could be, oh, but I think it's too expensive, or maybe it costs too much to run, it's too noisy. And then at that point, it could be helpful when either the employee has the time or they can refer back to us or whoever they want to contact, and you can sort of get a list of these concerns, and with data at hand you can say,
Hmm.
well, but this model, only has even at full power it only makes this much noise. And
Yeah,
like, if you have data to support what you are asking for, I feel like employers would be a little bit more um willing to listen at the
yeah,
very least, which I think nowadays that's already a big step.
yeah.
uh
I just want to add that I'm already converted to this, and I have a Square at home and a portable QT3 which I take with me as well as a monitor. And the issue, and I guess it's depending on how much you want to put yourself above put your head above the parapet. But I've done it where we ran a research workshop with another large charity, and because we had patients there who were immunosuppressed and transplanted, I pushed for HEPA filtration because the windows didn't open, and the PM 2.5 for the entire session was zero. And that was done with you guys in conjunction to know how many filters we needed for a run for the day. And but the problem is, I thought it was brilliant. But to those who, because like you said, you can't see indoor air quality, everyone just thought I was a bit crazy. Like, okay, we'll agree to what she wants, but I don't really see the benefit. And it's only after that you have to rationalize that. Hold on, we had sick patients in the room. We were there for their well-being, not just theirs, but everybody else that was in the room as well, to take care of each other. We seem to have lost empathy and compassion along the way of this pandemic, unfortunately, and taking care of one another.
yeah, no, I agree. There's uh again, if we could see um dirty air, just as we can see dirty water, it would be a different matter, I feel like, to some extent at least. I think I saw another hand raised at some point. uh just please go ahead.
Hello, it's Hilda here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Julia. That was really useful. And Swati, was it? That was a really useful intervention. We have huge problems on this. I come from the Greater Manchester Hazards Centre and the Hazards Campaign, and we set up some years ago a trade union clean air network where we've been fighting for to improve indoor air quality in workplaces from all the causes that you mentioned, but also you must include that many workplaces are actually generating huge amounts of VOCs and dust and fumes and whatever from
Mhm.
the work activity itself. And the approach that we take, and everything that Swati says is right in that. It is about trying to make the invisible visible. And yes, we also use the dirty water, dirty air comparison and have done for many years. It's getting more difficult now as we know that our rivers and seas are being filled with SHIT legally by a disgusting government and water companies. But you do have to. I think it's not an easy thing. You can show people that it's happening. You can show them with air monitors. You can show them that the filters work. You can try and convince them about all of these sort of things, but it isn't an easy thing to do. And people do need quite a lot more understanding before they can actually tackle it. It's not a question of saying, do this, do that, and do the other. And our approach is, in workplaces, everywhere outside of your own home is a workplace. All our public spaces, they're all workplaces, and
Yeah.
they should be. The problem we have, as has already been mentioned, is that we don't have strict enough health and safety laws and other indoor air quality standards that are actually mandated and then enforced. And so it's up to individual people and individual safety reps, individual groups of workers or parents and schools to have to be making all these arguments. And it's absolutely exhausting. And you come up against, a huge amounts of pressure. So it's inevitably going to be a combination of trying to convince individual people, trying to show them with the science and the evidence, as you have been doing in your work in smart air. And your filters have been absolutely phenomenal and a bit of a game changer in all of this. We've also been showing people how to make do it yourself Corsi Rosenthal boxes, because certainly in schools, that gets over the whole issue about getting people involved and showing them, how that actually works, as well as being huge amounts cheaper and producing a huge cadre. But it is a problem. We've just produced a worker's guide to indoor air pollution. We're working on a briefing for the incoming government, and we've also produced a film about the pollution caused by indoor cooking, in markets and in food hubs and things like that. So all these great community sort of places where people can meet, but are actually phenomenally polluting, huge levels of PM 2.5s and nitrogen oxide. There's a huge amount to do. I'm sorry, I've been going on too much, but I think we have to campaign. We also have to educate. We have to try and bring people along with us, and we have so much evidence and information that all of this works. But as we're all finding, that of itself isn't enough. But we just have to keep on fighting to change the whole overall attitude.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, even because some of these things for me now are sort of a given, but for just as many people, they just don't know. So even just awareness would be a great goal to achieve. And even making people more curious to learn about these things.
I wonder if it's worth, Julia, engaging with healthcare charities to try to push this message across, in terms of conversion, of
Mhm.
selling this message and explaining why it's so important for not just employee health, but public health, which
Yeah.
is dismally failing in this country and lots of other countries. But I wonder whether there is any scope for you guys as a relatively small. I know you're growing, but this message, I was hoping there was going to be hundreds of people on this call. When I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, everybody needs to attend this, but I don't know. I don't know what the plans are for Smarter, but it feels like beyond Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how else you get this message out. I follow you guys, and that's how I see the research that's published in this space.
Yeah.
But is there another way to engage mass audiences around this when we know that there is no health and safety legislation
Yeah.
around indoor air quality?
Yeah.
Just a
Well,
thought.
yeah, I mean, there definitely needs to be some sort of platform that is not just social media, because especially with social media, you sort of risk to put yourself in your own bubble, and then it seems like everyone agrees with you, but then just outside of it, no one really knows what you're talking about. So um, I'm not sure if I'll be able to use this one recording to, I'm not sure if we'll be able to use it to just put it out there, but definitely, if not this one, I'll just record myself again, doing the same sort of presentation. And then we can disseminate it in different um, uh, different contexts that is not just Twitter. It could be that we put it on YouTube and then we sort of share the link to, as you mentioned, maybe healthcare charities who are interested, um, and similar contexts. We'll see. We'll see who says yes. We'll see who's interested. Hopefully, there's sort of uptake on this topic. Not sure if there's anyone else who wants to add or ask anything. I see there's a question in the chat. How can we prove to our employers that the poor indoor air quality is affecting our performance and health? Well, I guess it's a little bit of a tricky one, because how do you um, like if you're sick more often, how do you prove that it's because of the poor indoor air quality and not just other things affecting it. Well, I guess we do have enough evidence that shows us how the air that we breathe causes a bunch of problems, either that it could be COVID, it could be the flu, it could be just asthma symptoms or coughing, or I think in the long term, I think it's harder to prove it in the short term, but then in the long term, you can sort of backtrack and sort of go back and see, well, I was sick this much for this long, and maybe it coincided with a time where I was more often in the office instead of working from home. Um, I guess, yeah, in that case, we have to be a little bit more creative, but with showing, with deciding what can be counted as proof. But ultimately, if you have an air quality monitor and you can prove that the air quality is poor where you're working, there's then enough evidence to support that it can cause issues with your health. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Any more questions or?
Just to say to Gia's
Mm.
comment, I think it's worth investing if there isn't one already, like an air quality monitor through you guys or through other companies that produce these, because doing an audit would be one of the simplest ways of proving what the air quality was like in the office space that you were sharing. I think the other factor that needs to be thought about is, like, the building I'm based in has CO2 monitors, but nobody knows that they're there because they're part of
Mm,
the building. It was one of the first things I noticed when I walked into the building, but that's because I was already schooled in the importance of looking at indoor air quality. And so people just, they have no idea what they're there for and what the action needs to be if the color changes. So there also needs to be almost like a public health campaign to raise awareness for people that may have these types of monitors in newer buildings, that they're there for a reason and they need to be actioned, but they're just on a wall. Nobody knows that it's there. Somebody thought it was. I asked somebody in my work, and they thought it was like an air conditioner controller.
mm. Yeah, yeah, it can be frustrating. Yeah, you're right. Employers should be monitoring in order to show that they're at least meeting very minimum standards. I feel like in some ways, employers or even just organizations are sort of afraid to go beyond what is mandated, because they still feel like there's too much risk linked to either these devices or just taking action that is not strictly mandated. Because what if in a few years' time something happens and then it goes back to them? So it's, yeah, it's a difficult one. Yeah. All right. If there's no more questions, and you can either raise your hand or write it in the chat, I will end the webinar at this time, or at the very least, I'm going to stop the recording.